Hey, welcome to this review of the historically based hand-drawn city builder called Thriving City Song. It's called that because it takes place in ancient China during the Song Dynasty. For the most part, this is just like any other city builder that you've ever played, but it does have a couple of things that are specific to it. The most important one being the historical inspiration. And while that comes out obviously in the ancient Chinese inspired art, it also comes out through the story elements that show up throughout you playing if you're playing through the story mode. We'll get to exactly how that plays out a little bit later, but let's start with gameplay and controls. The controls are super easy. You could play this with just a mouse if you wanted to, though there are hotkeys to open up different menus. Being able to play it this way, I think, makes it pretty accessible, as well as just adding to that like chill vibe. Of course, there are times where you won't be so chill when things are going wrong, but that's part of the game. I think for the most part, it's really easy to figure out how to play the game. The way that the story mode is set up, it is set up to be a tutorial, so as you progress through, every time that it's telling you, like, this is your next goal, it's teaching you a piece of the game, which is the best way to do a tutorial, in my opinion. There were a couple of things that maybe I missed them in some of those pop-ups. Maybe they weren't there, I'm not quite sure. But there were a couple things that I got a little hung up on. The first one was me panicking when this happened. And then shortly after that, while I'm panicking, not really understanding what's going on, this happens. I did have a guess as to what went wrong. The weather shows that it was very hot outside, which obviously led to a drought, and that drought led to locust. I didn't know how to fix this. My guess was that irrigation was wrong, and it's not that they don't tell you what the irrigation is on your tiles, but rather I didn't know what a good irrigation number was. So when it was like irrigation +2, I was like, oh, like a plus is good, that can't be bad. But the +2 is from like one well, which apparently was not enough. So after failing the first time going through the first story mode, I tried again and I put like a much larger emphasis on putting more wells throughout my farm and plotland. And it worked. I did end up getting another drought, but the locust did not show up afterwards, and I still had food at the end of the growing season. There is like a help section. I feel like the help section could have been fleshed out a little bit more, but at the same time, I have had the problem in other games where there's too much information. So I don't know if this was bad or good. A lot of the help section is just telling you what the little symbols mean and not a whole lot else. So maybe if there could be just like a little bit of a description about what it means to have locust, maybe a way to fix having locust. The other thing I didn't realize I had an issue with until I realized it was the tech tree. And again, I don't think this was like the hugest issue in the world, but I found out after researching a lot of things that you could be researching something in each of the trees rather than just civil, for instance. So I probably could have had a lot more going for me, but I don't think it ruined the experience at all, especially since part of playing games is figuring things out on your own. Not everything has to be told to you right off the bat. So I'm not super mad about that one either. As far as difficulty of the actual game, I haven't played a lot of city builders. I've played a few, but I haven't taken them like super seriously, if that makes sense. So I did fail the first time. I think part of that was also just me not focusing on the goals and more just focusing on making a city that worked. So my second time through, I focused on those goals a little bit more, and I finished it without really any problems. So the next section I want to move on to is graphics and sound. I am one of those people who don't care a whole lot about, like, crazy graphics, if that makes sense. Like, I don't need it to look like super realistic or anything like that. I much prefer like whatever the aesthetic, the vibe is, to match what I'm playing, and I think this game absolutely does it, being that the game is inspired by ancient China and the art is inspired by ancient China. I think that just makes sense. It feels right. The colors are soft, the lines are soft. The lines kind of look like ink drawings. So ink drawings may be graphite, but they're not like hard digital lines. I do really like that. The only time where the coloring isn't particularly soft is when there's something wrong and there's red. But I think that's a good thing. It definitely lets you hop on the problem as fast as possible if it is a problem that you can fix quickly, or you can't fix it quickly, but you can still work on it. Same thing goes for the sound. I'm not an audiophile by any means. I really just care about the vibe, and the sounds in this I think are great. The general ambiance is a chill game. The only time that it kind of gets picked up is when there's something going on. So at the beginning of every year, you get fireworks and some like a little bit more like crowd music, or crowd noise. When something goes wrong, you'll hear like an alarm bell or something like that, for instance with fire. Or crime. Also, when there is something new happening in the Empire and the story pops up, you get a little sound cue so that you know to look to the top of your screen. I do think it's nice that when you click on a building or a plot of land, you get like a little extra sound cue as to what's going on in that building. So if you click on a quarry, you're going to hear like the picking of an axe. I just like that as like a little bit of like audio interest. So the next section is story and characters. There isn't like a grand story by any means, but you do get little bits and pieces of what's going on in the Empire, as well as little bits and pieces from your citizens. They'll tell you stuff about the Empire as well as how they're doing in life. You'll get little pop-ups in the bottom of your screen, but also if you click on some citizens, you'll be able to find out what job they're doing, how they're feeling right now. And I also really like the character design. You don't see a whole lot change, but my favorite part of the character design was when the big bad thing happened during my first playthrough, and you scroll into the plotland, or to the plots and to the farms, and they're like sitting on the ground crying. I know that's a really sad thing, but I thought it was a really nice touch. So the story, you do get little inklings of what's going on in the Empire, but they're not like overwhelming. So if you've played through it a couple of times, you don't really have to pay attention to it. Or if you're just actually not that interested and you just really like the vibe of the game, you can kind of ignore the Empire story that's going on in the background. There are a couple of things in pop-ups for your goals in the story mode that will kind of tell you about what's going on in the Empire. For instance, one of the ones in the first scenario is telling you that your citizens, the children, want to take the like standardized testing, but I don't think that that's like so intrusive that you really have to pay attention to the story to know that that's coming or care about it if that's not the part of the game that you're interested in. Okay, replayability. I'll be honest, I haven't played enough to really know about replayability, but I don't think this is going to be much different than any other city builder where you have story mode, you can work through all of those scenarios. You then have, you know, the endless mode where you can go play another map, which I will definitely be doing probably on stream, and probably the Maple map because Canada. How could I not play the Maple map? It is a huge map, so I will probably play one of the smaller maps before I do that, just so that I can maybe play through some of the other scenarios as well. So as I play through those, I might throw those up here, so keep your eyes out. If you do really want those, let me know down in the comments. But even if you play through all of those things, you can continue to add replayability to city builders just by having your own goals about what you want to do. See, you know, like how fast you can get to a certain population. Like, I'm sure you can think of ways to challenge yourself if you want to keep playing this game. I think replayability is probably very high just based on the type of game that it is. City builders kind of just are replayable. The final section is just my personal opinion. I think it's really clear that I have positive feelings about this game. I am a really big fan of city builders, management games, so this was right up my alley. The, like, softness of the aesthetic is up my alley. Although I think I probably fit into like every aesthetic in one way or another. You will see me play horror games as well as things like this and Cozy Grove and Stardew. So I don't know that I really have an aesthetic to fit into. The only couple of complaints I already talked about, just a few things that frustrated me a little bit, not being able to find the answers right away. But that's not enough for me to say that this is a bad game by any means. Simply because I think sometimes it's okay to struggle and be challenged in a game for a little bit, and I figured everything out without having to, like, go to a walkthrough or anything like that. It was just like I had to sit and think for a couple of seconds, stop panicking. The information is there in the help section. You just have to look a little bit. You have to kind of logic it out a little bit. So that could be better, but I don't think it's bad. It's like good instead of great. It's like an A instead of an A+. That's my review of the game. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you decide if this is a game for you or not. I will leave the link to the Steam page down below for you. If you want to see more just gameplay of this, check out my stream. I will be playing it there eventually. You can keep up with what I'm going to be playing either in the Discord or on Twitter. And if you really want to see it, let me know down in the comments and I will be posting more videos. I know I said that I was going to do that with the last game I played. I actually just haven't had time to play that game again, except for a little bit on stream where I played like a different tree. But that's completely besides the point, so I'll leave you with a little bit more gameplay, just going right through without it being sped up or anything, without me talking over it, so you can get a little bit better of a vibe of the game. So enjoy that, and thank you so much for watching.
100亩之田，勿夺其食；数口之家，可以。仓廪实而知礼节，衣食足。